Hello and goodbye, post-match Raw. Trev, any plugs?
Yeah, don't watch that game if you missed it.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, this is going to be a fun show, ladies and gentlemen. But Trev is here with me, being the sole guest, the poor bugger, enjoying his Sunday afternoon. How you doing, Trev?
It just felt like an appalling waste of time. I won't lie to you. I was of the mindset that I wouldn't mind if we sort of quietly went out of this. We weren't allowed to quietly go out of it. Well, I wasn't because I was watching an ITV where Sam Matterface refused to acknowledge reality for the entirety and talked about, the best team in England, the best team, in Europe, and how they're falling and they look like they're going to fall foul of mighty little Plymouth who are bottom of the championship. Blah, blah, fucking blah. So it was hard enough to listen to that, but just what really sort of compounded it was we had a load of sort of fringe boys there who had an opportunity to step up and do a few things. And not only did they all kind of uniformly fail in that, but we also had yet another injury, just to add sort of insult to injury. And, I'm just looking at the comments there on Discord. Mr. Positive reckons it's going to be short. Oh, it will be, Mr. Positive. And as for John, it does seem a bit like self-harm doing this, but we're going to force it through anyway, man.
And that's enough for me. It really wasn't a pretty game. But let's talk about the FA Cup, because everyone came into this season thinking, right, Jurgen's left. We've had I was going to say awful summer there. I'd probably, you can't really say that now because we top of the Premier League and Champions League, but I'd say stupidly quiet summer. Everyone's thinking, okay, maybe we'll be in a top four fight. The FA Cup, we may nab it. League Cup, we may nab it. And it's obviously not turned out that way. So I'd say, obviously, with us being in the League Cup final, and we were already through the later stages anyway in recent times, the FA Cup is literally the bottom of the barrel in terms of priorities this season. Plus, historically, it's not our cup. The League Cup is historically our cup. After this game, I come away from it. I'm annoyed by the performance, but I'm not overly arsed about the result, which sounds weird to say. I'd rather go out at this stage than go all the way to the semi-final and lose, if that makes sense.
Oh, it entirely makes sense. And it's often a deeply unpopular sentiment amongst, the lads who want to win all the things and the quadruple chasers and all the rest of it. Look, we'd all love to win all the trophies all the time. And the fact that it was a possibility for 2 seasons recently, I think has sort of made a lot of people drunk on the concept of it, because at the end of the day, it's just a concept, and the reality of it is very, 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 very hard to achieve. And you have to make some choices along the way when you are doing well in the main 2 competitions. And the manager today with his selection made a choice, and I think, and the main choice was to not have the depth there to rescue the game. I think that spoke volumes, because if there was a load of the heavy hitters sitting there on the bench to come on and say, "Oh shit, we're not going to get through this," or this is it's turning into one of those cup upsets. Roll on Dom and Mo and get them on the bench, off the bench there real quick, and it's still not going our way. So I don't know. Let's throw another couple of first teamers out. Let's give Mac 15 minutes. Nothing like that. It was very clear from the bench as much as anything else what the manager was doing today. And like I say, I'm being excessively harsh because I went into this, man, and I was of the firmly unpopular opinion that it would be nice to sort of quietly exit this and not have to think about this competition, because I have been very bullish about our opportunities if we get strongly through February. And any distraction at all, I think, is a bad distraction. Like you said, we're in the final of the other cup competition. We can't do anything else better than that at this point. This thing seems like a needless distraction. It's just the nature of the way it went on the day, with so many lads who could have put their hand up and said, "Hey, Arne, you need to be thinking about me on a regular basis." The main culprit for me, to get into it just briefly, we'll obviously go back to this, was Harvey Elliott. I thought the poor kid stank the place out. And I'm also kind of sick of calling him a poor kid. And he has this, he looks disgruntled as well. He doesn't look happy in himself, and it's obviously not going his way at the moment. You know, Diaz and Jota and Chiesa is a good front line, and they were huffing and puffing what Chiesa was. Jota and Diaz were pretty anonymous and very ineffective. McConnell and Leone alongside Harvey Elliott are kind of left out, hung out to dry. I think the midfield decision there is it's a very, very telling one, and I think you're being massively disingenuous if you don't acknowledge that, especially when you look at what's on the bench there to bring in. And he could have brought Curtis Jones in at any point and did not bring Curtis Jones in. So you just have to think. I think, this is a very clever man, and I'm not saying he's playing 17D chess or something, but I honestly don't believe he's going to be that arsed about this. Nothing about that lineup, nothing about that bench, nothing about the in-game management told me that he was that arsed about getting a win here, Guy.
Oh yeah, for a game that was screaming out for Curtis Jones to not even consider bringing him on, yeah, it tells you everything you need to know, I think, in that game. So I'd agree with everything you've just said there. It's something I think he was willing to risk it with the youngsters, as you say, and as we see by the lineup. He could have easily, we weren't saying bring Mo Salah to whack him on the bench against Plymouth or something like that, but you could have brought, as you mentioned, Dom could have brought Drive into that game. Gakpo's on fire and could have easily brought him. He went to PSV, which obviously very different because that was his club, obviously. But yeah, the lineup and the bench, as he says, it's a really good point. Just on the FA Cup, Trev, and this is just to get an extra 30 seconds out the show because we don't want it to go 20 minutes. Obviously, I grew up with the FA Cup being in its decline. Like, I love 2006. Obviously, the cup final being magnificent helped. But like in my entire lifetime, the FA Cups I grew up in the Millennium Stadium era. That's kind of when people thought it dropped off, and I think people put it towards Fergie bidding it off for the Club World Cup, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
You obviously grew up when the FA Cup was only second to the league, and the European Cup, obviously. But it was such a bigger thing in the 90s and before that, obviously. Do you think it's even behind the League Cup now? Because the League Cup is, and it's easy to say because we're in the final, it's our cup, yada, 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 as I've said. But the League Cup, it's a nice competition. It's done by March, which is late for the season as well. But I've always thought I'd rather win the League Cup. You get a cup in nice and early. And for a team like us, who this last decade or so has been fighting for Premier Leagues and European Cups, it always felt like, we have a final in the FA Cup, but the European Cup's the real main event. If you get what I mean.
100%. I mean, unless I'm mistaken, didn't we get to the FA Cup final in Kenny's year where we won the League Cup? We won whatever iteration it was of the League Cup. We won in 2012 with Kenny. And we got to that FA Cup final, and it meant a lot because it was Kenny. And there was that through line to when the FA Cup was huge. And you're right, like for me, possibly the best day of my supporting life was when we clinched a double in 85-86 and Kenny Dalglish just revived the Rovers player-manager season. I mean, it's madness, mad stuff that you could... It's daft. It's exactly the story from a comic, and he's doing it. And he's my hero, and he's the best player I've ever seen, and all that type of stuff. And just the right age as well, to be really massively into it. And the FA Cup had such cachet, it really did. And our mate, our channel legend, Jan, was instrumental in that 86 FA Cup final. He was man of the match. He was absolutely amazing. And then 89 is probably... arguably one of the most, if not the most important trophy that I saw won because of the context of what had happened in the immediate months and weeks before with Hillsborough. And, the fact that it was Everton again was important, I think, in its own way. And it had that cachet, And like you're right to say that there's been such a falling off. And, you can say about what Ferguson did and all the rest of it. But it wasn't just him. It crept in. Maybe that was the initial sign of disrespect, but that was a conversation that was going on for the best part of a decade and a half there, through that sort of mid 2000s to 2010s into the middle of like players and managers disrespecting the FA Cup. Rafa Benitez,
the rise of the Champions League as well.
Exactly. So it got bumped for sure, and I think it did get bumped to a situation now where there's a best case scenario. There's nothing between them. They are domestic cups, and look, we've got a reasonably decent record in terms of our performances in those two competitions, in the Klopp era. But I'm not going to be reflecting on them. I loved the League Cup win last time out because of the nature of it with the kids in the park and all the rest of it. I thought it was great. But again, it's one for the day out merchants. I like the ones for us. Like, we consider ourselves to be chasing this league title, and we consider ourselves to be in with a shout of the Champions League. So therefore, if you come up short, the rest of it is consolation time. And if it allows better squad management for the three competitions we stand a real chance in, it's the early stages of this thing. So if it allows for us to have a real chance, just even so a slender advantage in terms of managing the squad in the coming weeks, especially look at the month we've got ahead of us, Guy, with the rescheduled game now at Aston Villa fired in just to make it 5 crucial Premier League games coming up in February. It's wild. So when you've got fixture congestion like that, and this is not being wise after the event, I said it beforehand. As they scored, I was saying, oh no, how awful we've conceded, because that's exactly how I felt, Guy. I can't be a hypocrite and come on here and talk about how pissed off I am that we're out of the cup. I honestly would love to tell you that I care, because this trophy meant so much to me as a kid. It was so important to football in general, and not that long ago. But I think you're of the exact era where there has been that fade away, and the difference between them now at this stage is only the tradition of the FA Cup, and even that now people are less and less engaged with. So for me, I'm not disgruntled. Like you said earlier on, a version of what you said earlier on, I'm not disgruntled about the fact that we're out of the FA Cup. I am disgruntled about the fact that we had to watch a really insipid encounter with some incredibly disappointing showings from lads. Now, you've got to put it into context. One or two of them were a little bit hung out to dry with the way the team was lined up, but there should have been enough on that field, if we trust these players that we we're so fond of and so high on usually. There should have been enough to rattle them, to fire pepper shots in on their keeper in the first half. We didn't do anything like that.
All right, the Reds, it's Jack here, and that was a clip from one of Anfield Index's audio podcasts. If you have enjoyed the video, make sure you do like, share and subscribe to keep up to date on all things LFC. We record around 100 audio podcasts every month, with our shows featuring match-going fans, top journalists, professional analysts and even Liverpool legends along the way, with the great Dane himself, Jan Molby, joining us every single week. If you want to listen to all our podcasts for free, head over to anfieldindex.com/podcasts. Our audio shows are available wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Anfield Index. Or if you prefer to listen to all our podcasts in full and without any ads, why not head over to AI Pro today to check it out now at AnfieldIndexPro.com. If you want to get involved in the great growing community of Liverpool fans, check out the Anfield Index Discord. The link is in the description. Do get involved with that, from Reds around every corner of the globe. For now, Reds, hope you enjoyed this video.